Good afternoon, senators and peoples of the Republic of Rome. This is Kinninigan from RagingReptilian.com. This is part 2 of the video I made, the Greenland theory. I'm not going to be covering too much of what was in the first video. Briefly, if you haven't seen the first video, I'm going to go through this. I will be leaving links in the description. I highly recommend you watch the first one because each one of these videos that I make is covering a specific thing. In a nutshell, the Greenland theory, Apocalypse Now, is the theory that Imperial Rome is still in power. They moved their imperial, their main power to Greenland, which we covered in the first one through the obvious symbolism all throughout the world. Most of what I went over in the first video was direct research from David Chase Taylor, who wrote the book. These links will be in the description, the exact way that I'm presenting the websites to you. And we also have a little bit of a slideshow to go through. I put together, you can call it a PowerPoint presentation, but this is going to be a straight dissertation. And what I'm covering here in the second video ties in with my research. This is I'm only proving his theory more correctly by and I'm going to entitle this one Religion. Except before you jump the gun and start leaving comments, I will be live streaming this, so if you're in the chat, welcome. Like I said, don't jump the gun too much. We're not talking about the actual context of what is in religious texts. What I'm going to prove to you is how, through all the different religions that we have in the world, whether it be Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Catholicism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, I am going to, prove to you that these religions have more in common than you may want to believe. We know that religion and politics has been used as one of the main tools to divide and conquer all throughout the ages, and I'm going to even show you of how Rome, the idea from the first video is that Rome did this during what is called the Dark Ages. When we come out of the Dark Ages is when we get something very interesting happen. And it was done under the guise, yes, of the Vatican and Christianity, known as the Renaissance era. And we'll be talking about that because it's very important. What do I mean by all religions have more in common? Well, I'm going to defend myself here before I actually get into talking about this. I want to remind people right here of what a need to shrink this down a little bit so I don't accidentally hit the play button on the Screencast-O-Matic, or the stop button. This is the infamous, if you've been following my channel for quite a few years, this was the test footage that Jim Henson put out in 1979 when coming up for the design of the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. The ones that look a lot like the Anunnaki from Babylon. The very avian-looking Anunnaki. That in itself is a theory I take a lot of credit for, putting together that these are not 1,200-pound reptilians. When we are talking about Rome and the Illuminati, yes, we are talking about the reptilians from Babylon. There's a reason. The avian symbol is going to be one of the most important things. We're not talking about, like I said, religious context here. So, now, to defend myself, there are a lot of people out there who talk about the Anunnaki, the fallen angels, the Nephilim. They tie it in with biblical things. I'm going to show you some symbolism because in the many years that I've been doing the research into Sumeria and the Anunnaki and Babylon, I have never, not even Zachariah Stitchin, heard anyone talking about the actual organized religion that comes out of Babylon. And when you hear the idea of angel in your head, the idea of angels is not a Christian concept, because in Babylon they worshipped a deity that was known as an angel. So the first angel worship can actually be traced back to Babylon. In the case of the Greenland theory, and he even makes the thing that Rome is modern. Babylon becomes Rome, and I've made videos about this before. They killed off a lot of the ancient other religions, such as Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and Rome becomes the source of power in ancient times. They would also do this through the manipulation of religions. Now, there's a few factors that come into play here. How do you manipulate the entire planet through religion? Well, I'm just going to throw this fact out there. Most Freemasons are said to be Christian. In fact, they go to church every Sunday. Very few are Catholic. You're not allowed to be Catholic and a Freemason. You could be a Jesuit, though, or a member of the Knights of Columbus. But I have a website pulled up here that lists most of the secret societies and fraternal organizations on the planet. And you're going to see this is one of the theories put together in the first video, that yeah, they've been using secret societies to control a lot of the planet. There are Freemason lodges in every country, going from China to Africa. And it's 206 nations that Rome rules over in modern day. Hence why the American eagle is our symbol. But I've been teaching a lot of people to follow the eagle, but there's another interesting avian bird that comes into play here. So, first of all, I'm going to show people this. As I was just showing that reptilian from the Jim Henson footage, this is ancient ruins that they found in modern day Turkey, which is ancient Mesopotamia. This is one of the temple sites of the Anunnaki. And what are you looking at? Well, you're looking at a queen, a king, and an obvious eagle-headed reptilian right there. And that was right on a statue. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to go visit a lot of these sites in ancient Babylon because they're war-torn areas right now. And really think about that one, because we're going to be talking about some of the things that they've been doing in ancient times through religion to divide and conquer people. We know about the wars going on in the Middle East right now. And this is going to tie into an organization known as ISIS, and there's a reason why, and it'll make sense. Because ISIS was responsible for killing off the people who were still practicing one of the most ancient religions in the world, which can ultimately be tied as the root to all religions. People never heard about this, have they? And this is pretty interesting. Does anyone know that there was an organized religion in Babylon? So let's talk about the world religions and how they differ, and then we'll take a look at how they are all the same and how Rome has been using this in conjunction with secret societies. They've used a lot of, throughout the ages, different, like ISIS is the modern way they did this. After the Dark Ages, we're going to be talking about the Vikings, and that ties in with something very interesting as far as the spread of Catholicism throughout England and Europe. Very interesting things here. Now, like I said, we're not talking about the context of religions in this video, and I'm going to be moving through this quite quickly. The links that are going to be in the description, I'm going to put these in the order that I show them to you here. Just give me a second. Since I started using the Brave browser, it gives me a lot of trouble when pulling up YouTube and Google, because I don't think Google likes the Brave browser. Rome and the Greenland theory. This will be the second link that's in the description. This is the the first lecture I gave on the topic. Just going over the basics of how Rome hid themselves during the Dark Ages, still remain the power, or the, as I call them, the Illuminati. Now, one thing that David didn't say is that these people are reptilian. And the stuff that I'm about to show you in this video tying in with the religions, except for the secret societies, he did acknowledge that, which is very true. That's a very important piece of the puzzle. We'll get into those other subjects in other videos. So, if you're interested in lectures I have done on ancient Rome already, There's quite a few. I will just put this link in the description. It's a playlist of my lectures on Rome, Rome and the bull cult of Mithra, Romulus and Remus, the founding of Rome, the occult power of Rome and the Vatican, making the pasta, you know. The truth about CERN, the CIA and Rome, of course, Rome and the Greenland theory. What is Roman bread and circus? Well, you just had the Super Bowl. That's Roman bread and circus. And reptilian owl symbolism and the Roma's goddess Minerva. In case any of you didn't know, the owl at the Bohemian Grove is not the symbol of Molech. That is the symbol of the goddess Minerva. Also tied in the child sacrifice, though. Vatican symbolism decoded, reptilian worship in plain sight, the temple of Baal, Moloch, and child sacrifice. So, if long story short, I've got hours of lectures here just on Rome. If you're interested in some of the religious context of what I'm going to be talking about with Abrahamic religions, because I've got over 1,000 videos on my channel and quite a few occult lectures. See, I go to pull a page up here and YouTube does this to me all the time. I have fiber optic internet. There's no reason my browser should be freezing up. The reptilian manipulation of Abrahamic religions, and that will go into more of the subversion into Islam, Judaism, and Catholicism. So I'm not going to be touching on those points. The road that we're going down today, road, pun intended, for what I'm about to show you, is just the symbolism, because that's all we need to follow. Anyone that researches the occult, secret societies, we live in a world of symbols. And of course, if you're curious, this is a search on the lectures I've done on Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ and the Secret Teachings, the Book of Nazarene. They are the teachings that he taught. And I'll make a video in the future about Jesus and his possible exodus to none other than Ethiopia, which was it was known as the land of Punt in ancient times, and it was a powerful kingdom. And it ties a lot in. Rome never conquered Africa by military campaign. Yes, they did go to war with Carthage, but that's very important when putting together this history. But they have conquered Africa, the division of city-states and injection of secret societies throughout. And then we do have missionaries spreading Catholicism throughout Africa. That's the way they've been doing it. But they never actually, in fact, nobody has ever militarily conquered Africa. It's too big of a continent. So there's quite a few lectures in here. Now we're going to Henry James, very famous author. All roads lead to Rome, and there were times when it might have struck us that almost every branch of study or subject of conversation skirted forbidden ground. Just to reiterate on that, the first video I did on this, I covered a lot of the symbolism being in your face. Look at all the terminology written in Latin. From medical terms to legal terms to even in our own government, we have Latin quotes all over our Roman architecture in Washington, D.C. I covered that in the first video. We're not going to be going over that. So what do I mean by all religions can be traced back to Samaria? Well, here's where things get very interesting. And I have not seen any other people put together or even make sense of what I am about to show you. We have major religions of the world here. Christianity, of course, being the biggest with 2 billion members. The second largest being Islam with 1.2 billion members. Then we have Sikhism, which is Hinduism. Sikhism and Hinduism, yes, they're religions that come out. We're going to compress these religions into a more easier way. Judaism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism. I do not consider Confucianism, Buddhism, or Taoism to be religions. They're more philosophical studies and way of life. Buddhists in monasteries do not really practice religious rites. It's more of self-reflective philosophy and finding enlightenment. However, There is no Abrahamic religion, whether it be Islam, Judaism, or Catholicism, that will ever get you to enlightenment. Just saying, this ties in with some of the subversion into the religions themselves. Then we have Chinese folk religion. Although, yeah, some of the religions that come out of China are Confucianism, Taoism, obviously, but China actually does have a pantheon of gods. In fact, I've covered the Chinese gods in the video before. So, and then we have, of course, now the easiest way to sum these up is you have monotheism. This is the Abrahamic religions, people of the book. Islam, they believe in Allah. Judaism, belief in one God. Christianity, the belief in one God. Then you have polytheism. Now, I do not call polytheism paganism, and there's a reason why. There's a very big difference. The Roman definition of paganism is anyone, because we are talking about Rome here, so I don't want anyone defending of what they think a pagan is. This is the Roman definition of paganism, because we're talking about Rome in this video. These are people that make ritual sacrifices to the gods and goddesses. Meaning, yeah, you're taking a goat to the altar, slitting its throat, and drinking the blood. That is paganism from the Roman definition. Polytheism. This would fall under Chinese folk religion, Hinduism, and Sikhism. This is the worship of many gods, but they're not pagan, and they don't practice pagan ritual, but they believe in many gods. Take, for example, Hinduism. It's pretty interesting. They have a large amount of gods in their pantheon. However, they're not committing sacrificial sacrifices in their practicing of it. So that's what polytheism is. And then, but like if you read Hindu religious texts, it more or less reads like some people might brush it off as science fiction, but it's more or less like a history of the planet going back, I believe, up to like, I did a video on Rama's Bridge, and that story goes back 1.5 million years, where Rama Situ goes to war with the demon Ravana. And so Hinduism, you could brush off as science fiction, like where do they get these stories? It may be based more in reality than people want to admit. Same thing with Chinese folk religion also. There's the story of the, I believe it's the four winds that come together and form like their creationism. Now, one thing that I'm not going to touch on this video, I'm aware of it. It becomes a sensitive subject, but this is what I mean by, I don't care if you're a Native American Indian and I am Catholic. I need you to realize that our beliefs are more rooted from the same place going right to Babylon than you may want to believe. Let's talk about indigenous religions and then I'm going to bring you up to the religion of Sumeria, and things are really going to start to make sense here. This may be eye-opening to a lot of people. This may get a lot of people upset that have been researching or putting out videos about the Anunnaki, Sumeria, the fallen angels, and the Nephilim, and tying in with who are... Look, I'm just going to show you the symbols and prove to you that we all have a basis that comes from Babylon. Now, going back to Babylon, the Anunnaki create humans, right? I'm going to defend a lot of people when they say that, you know, the first humans, it's theorized that they came out of Africa, but it would actually be Mesopotamia for that reason, that they were darker skinned people, the indigenous peoples around the world, Native American Indians, the Aboriginal from Australia, and just about every continent has been seeded with different types of indigenous peoples. Then, you don't have like people like me, blonde hair, blue eyed people. Supposedly our roots come out of the Caucasus Mountains after this. But what's very interesting about indigenous peoples, more or less their creationism stories revolve around star people. Take, for example, what if we're not talking about star people and the ancients, where they get their ancient oral tradition for Indians? You ever wonder why, and this is going to make sense when I show you the avian symbols, why, for example, Native Americans prefer feathered headdresses. We get stories coming from the Aztecs of Quetzalcoatl, the plume serpent. Yeah, this is avian worship. This is very important. My theory is these indigenous people were the first ones created from Babylon. Quite possibly the stories they carry down from the ancients are nothing more than being created and flown probably by a UFO, if you want to call it a UFO, a spaceship, all around different parts of the planet and seeded into these. It would make sense. It would make a lot of sense as to why all these indigenous cultures, their same creationism stories, coincide with each other when these people don't have contact with each other. Now, I'm going to make a separate video about indigenous creationism stories to prove that they all have origins that are the same too, probably rooted from Sumeria. But I'm not going to cover that in this video. I wouldn't call those people pagan, and there's, whatever you want to call what ancient peoples practice around the planet. That's up for debate, but you got to admit there are stories of, they all talk about star people, take for or serpent, the Aboriginals, for example, from Australia. You have the serpent rainbow story. I haven't made a video about that. I will in the future, though. But one of the most interesting religions that we have on here, Zoroastrianism. What is Zoroastrianism? And why is the symbol for Zoroastrianism the symbol of the Anunnaki? Yeah. Now, here's where things get interesting. I got a slideshow put together here. Anyone know what this is? This is the symbol of the oldest religion on Earth. We have the two lions. Nothing new there. The gates of Ishtar from Babylon have lions on them. The infamous relief of Ishtar has her standing on the backs of two lions. But what is this bird right here? That is the peacock. Now, the eagle is a bird. The peacock is a bird. What is a peacock? A peacock is an interesting bird. One, what's very interesting about the peacock is, although this religion comes out of Iraq, ancient Syria, and Iran, which is ancient Mesopotamia, peacocks are not native to this part of the world. How did these ancient people know what a peacock was? Right. In fact, I don't even think lions were around in this part of the world. Lions are more or less exclusive to Africa. The first time that people saw lions in Rome in the Colosseum, these were lions and elephants and stuff and crocodiles that they brought back from their conquests in Africa when they were trying to militarily dominate Africa and then realized they couldn't do it. And they would, lions are native to Rome. They're not native to ancient Mesopotamia. So, this is the symbol of the Roman legions. And this is what I mean about people talking about the fallen angels and the Nephilim. Well, that symbolism is right on there. SPQR, that's the symbol of Rome. Here goes the double lightning bolts, symbolic of the fallen angels. You have the wings, which is the avian reference, and the horn right there is actually a unicorn. Very interesting animal. I'm going to make a video about the unicorn in the future. You see a lot of unicorn statues in all places. England, of all things. So, here's where things get really interesting. Anyone know what this is? Have you ever seen this? This is the symbol of the religion of a group of people known as the Yazidi. You may have heard of the Yazidi because they were recently slaughtered recently by ISIS in Iraq. And these are the people who carry the oldest living organized religion on the planet. And yes, that is Sumerian cuneiform right there. And the symbol of the peacock. And the peacock is not native to ancient Babylon. It's not a desert bird, okay? You obviously see the ziggurats on here. This is all cuneiform. This is the language of the Anunnaki. And of course, we have the avian symbol of the peacock. Very interesting about a peacock, too. A lot like what I teach about the reptilians. It is actually the male peacock who has the big majestic plume behind him, where he makes himself look bigger than he actually is with this majestic looking colorful tail. A lot like what the reptilians do. That's just some of the symbolism there. But what's interesting about the Yazidi is that peacock is actually a specific reptilian deity known as the peacock angel. And you thought angels were a Christian term? You thought the fallen angels was a Christian term? No, this all goes back to Babylon. Before I show you the rest of the slideshow here, because the next part of the slideshow, I prove to you that all religions of the world have more in common, rooting from Sumerian. And they write this religion off as Zoroastrianism. No, well, I'm going to call it what it is. It's the Yazidi, because they were the only... A few other interesting things about ISIS also. Why was ISIS not only trying to slaughter the Yazidi, who carry the oldest religion on the planet, and it is serpent worship? Why were they destroying the ancient Roman sites in Syria, known as Palmyra? In the first video of the Greenland theory, we showed you that the Roman columns are a symbol of Roman domination around the world. This is why we have Roman columns in our buildings in Washington, D.C. That's what they had out in the middle of Palmyra. We also, going back even further, when Al-Qaeda destroyed the big Buddhist statue over, and I believe that was Afghanistan. So, are they trying to cover up the actual Roman influence into these areas? Very interesting. To me, well, we all know ISIS is a front group. It does not represent Islam. But they were not only engaging in ritual human sacrifice with just the slaughtering of people in the Middle East and creating war, chaos to feed off the loose energy, that's the negative energy reptilians feed on. They were specifically targeting Roman sites in Syria. They were slaughtering the Yazidi, who carry the only organized religion that comes right from Sumeria. And like I said, I have not seen any other researchers who cover the Anunnaki, Babylon, Sumeria, who have talked about the Yazidi or this religion. Why is there, what does this peacock symbolize? Why is there cuneiform on their symbol? Interesting. So who are the Yazidi? This is one of the few links that I have pulled up because I'm going to read this to you. And then things might make a little bit more sense and you'll understand how Rome was basically, look, your relationship with God should be between you and God, or Jesus if that's the way, or Allah if you're Muslim, or whatever beliefs you have. I don't care if you worship Shiva, Jesus, your relationship with God is it. My ability to disassociate my religion with what I actually teach, and to me this is just nothing more than an ancient history lesson, and I'm just showing you symbolism. That's why I don't like being called a truther or a conspiracy theorist, because I don't put myself in that class, but I've never seen anyone show you what I'm about to show you, and it should be pretty mind-opening. Because ultimately, it ties back to the symbol of the eagle. So, what is Yazidism, and what do Yazidis believe? Here, I'll increase the text in case anyone wants to read along with me here. Yazidism is the religion of the Kurdish people group that lives primarily in Iraq. Baghdad is ancient Babylon. Some Yazidis also live in Armenia, Turkey, Iran, Georgia, and Syria. The Kurds are usually identified as an Iranian ethnic group descended from the Medes. Not all Kurds are Yazidis, but all Yazidis are Kurdish. The Yazidi live in tight-knit communities, and marriage outside the religion is not allowed. That's how they kept their religion going on for thousands of years, because they didn't marry outside of it. The Yazidi follow a strict caste system within their culture. The Yazidi are also called Yazidai, Dasan, or Zidai. Yazidis are monotheistic. No, well, they say that on here, but it's not. They engaged in serpent worship. And they believe in a creator god whom they call Yazdan. Similarity to Christianity ends with monotheism. Now, this religion is older than Christianity. It's older than Islam. It goes all the way back to Babylon. So regardless of what this website tells you, I'm only using it just to give you some basic information on it. But it's more about the symbolism that we're about to delve into. According to Yazidism, after the creation, the world was placed in the care of 7 angels. In Babylon, we have 7 tablets of creation also. Now, they said this is monotheism, but they admit to worshiping quote-unquote angels. Their chief is a being called the Peacock Angel. Now, I honestly believe this Peacock Angel is a representation of Marduk, but it is one of the Ajiji gods, I'll tell you that right now. It could be Enlil, could be Enki, but I think the peacock symbol is more in tune with Marduk. A rather and the only reason why I'm saying that is because of the lions on the symbol the first, and Marduk has been associated with the lion symbol. A rather capricious ruler who causes both bad and good things to happen to people. The Yazidis have a myth about the peacock angel falling from God's favor. A myth about the peacock angel falling from God's favor and then eventually being redeemed after his tears of repentance quenched the fires of the hell to which he had been sent for punishment. Folks, is that not the story that comes from the Bible of the fallen angels? Yes, it is. The book of Genesis was based on the 7 tablets of creation of Babylon. This is what I mean. I hate to burst people's bubbles out there that talk about fallen angels and the Nephilim and the Anunnaki, but listen, you need to really study what the Yazidi did. And this is pretty much in your face. The peacock angel falling from God's favor and then eventually being redeemed. Yeah, come on. That's the story of the fallen angels. This tale correlates in some ways to the story of the Sufi religion. The figure Iblis, the Sufi version of Satan, is sometimes equated with the Yazidi peacock angel. Because of this connection, Yazidis are thought of as devil worshippers by other regional religions, and this is one reason for the persecution of Yazidis by Sunni Muslims, including ISIS. I just told you about that. I'm not buying the devil worshipper thing. It's serpent worship. It is reptilian worship. And the Yazidi, it's no coincidence their story correlates with the story of the fallen angels and the Nephilim. Yazidism is a syncretic religion that has been described as a mixture of Islam, Zoroastrianism, and Mithraism. Mithra, that's the Roman Mithra cult. In the playlist that I showed you in the beginning of the video, I do a lecture. It's an hour and a half long on the bull cults of Rome and the cult of Mithra. Although Yazidi theology is based on oral tradition, passed in through hymns, they do have 2 holy books, the Mishifa Res, or the Black Book, and the Kitiba Siwi, or the Book of Revelation. Can you get any more of it? They have a Book of Revelation. Oh, how convenient. The Yazidi pray to the peacock angel several times a day, facing east. Yazidi children are baptized at birth. Once a year, the Yazidi make a pilgrimage to the tomb of the Sheikh Adi Ibn Masifir, a key figure in their religion, in the city of Lalish, Iraq, ancient Sumeria. Yazidi accept no converts. In order to be Yazidi, one must be born a Yazidi. Yazidis believe they descended from Adam alone. Now, the story of Adam ties in. I covered the Sumerian tablet, the Adapa and the Food of Life, which was another Sumerian tablet, conveniently twisted for a Christian Bible. The story of the Garden of Eden is actually a play on a Sumerian tablet, Adapa and the Fruit of Life. Without the help of Eve, but this was the rest of the humanity, came from the union of Adam and Eve. Yazidism teaches the transmigration of souls, the idea that upon death, souls pass on to different bodies. Through this chain of death and rebirth, people are gradually purified. Yazidism differs from Christianity in almost every way, from the creation story onward. Yazidism is related to the religions of the ancient Assyrians, Babylonians, Chaldeans, three groups mentioned many times in the Old Testament. In fact, Chaldeans are mentioned from first in Genesis 11, and Abram was born into the group of people. Okay, I think you get the idea. And this is why, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but yeah, come on. Why are the Yazidis practicing the same beliefs that Christians are? They have a book of Revelation. They talk about the peacock angel who falls in the grace of God and is punished into hell. Is that not the story of the fallen angels? So can I prove that all these religions do carry the same symbolism here? And Rome, going in conjunction, this will be the next video of the lectures, is into secret societies of Rome, okay? So I'll cross that bridge next. You need to understand that secret societies and religion and religious leaders, politicians, they all go hand in hand. They're all on the quote-unquote level, if you know what I mean. Let's look at some of the obvious symbolism. Again, here is the symbol of the Yazidi, the peacock angel. Here's where things get interesting. Oh dear. The Hindu god, Shiva. Did you know that the Hindu god's vehicle is a peacock? Wow. Yeah, Shiva being one of the highest gods of the Hindu pantheon. Oh, and if you notice too, this peacock is standing on the back of a cobra or a serpent. We also have a Shiva statue outside of CERN also. But it gets more interesting. Saint Michael. Did you know that Saint Michael is considered the peacock saint of the Christian pantheon? This is a relief that comes out of what I was just talking about, the Renaissance era. We'll get to that in a second. And what is he doing? He is slaying a serpent, a dragon to be specific. A lot more people that follow the New Testament are probably very familiar with doves. They're mentioned quite often in the Bible. Psalm 55, verse 6. I said, "Oh, that I had wings of a dove, I would fly away and be at rest." Another avian symbol, not just with Saint Michael. What's the other famous quote that comes from the Bible? We must be gentle as doves and wise as serpents. And of course, right off a Lodge of the Freemason, written in Latin. I know what Deo means. That's God in Latin. What is that? That's the double phoenix. That is the Masonic eagle with the infamous 3-2 with the inverted pyramid above it. You'll see that just about on outside, most Masonic lodges. Another avian symbol, but that is more in tune with the symbol of Rome, the eagle. These are all avian symbols, though. They're all birds. Here's where things get very interesting. Anyone know what that is? That is the symbol of the Vatican. Except where we see the double eagles on the Masonic Lodge, those double eagles are replaced by what? Keys. What do keys do? They unlock things. Yeah, the Vatican has a lot of secrets that they can unlock for this planet. So how does this tie in with Rome and the imperialism? Last part of this video. we come out of the Dark Ages, okay? I'm going around to the time of 900 AD. And around these times of 900 AD, I'm going to take you on a little history here of just some of the ways that the Vatican has progressed their power throughout Europe and the world. Not just through the symbols. We come out of the Dark Ages. At this time, England is divided into kingdoms. Now, if you didn't know, Britannia, as referred to by the Romans, was conquered by Rome. It would eventually become their major administrative branch of power. This is why we operate under British maritime law. This is why lawyers in the United States take the bar, that is the British Administrative Registry. So, what happens around this time is we have a pagan group known as the Vikings who start raiding the shores of England and killing Christians. At this time, a lot of England and the divided kingdoms start becoming under control of the Vatican by converting to Christianity. We also see this happening in Europe. It's happening in France. It's happening, now, one of the closest allies of Rome, because the Roman short sword, the gladius, is actually a Spanish short sword, has always been Spain. And so Spain, not really too much of a player like in these medieval wars. Spain has been at war for a long time, but Spain is another direct it's a representative of Rome. I'll make a video about Spain in the future. They got a very interesting history dealing with something called the Blue Bloods. I'm very well aware of it. Or the blue skinned people. Very interesting stories that come out of Spain. And they have very close ties to Rome. And to this day, they remain Catholic. So we come out of the Dark Ages. That lost part of history that we can't account for. We have Vikings start raiding. So what happens in England is England will eventually unite into one kingdom. And so they could fight off the pagan invasion of the Vikings. You take the Vikings and their quote-unquote pagan invasions back then, the Viking raids. It's no different than what ISIS is doing today in modern Middle East wars now, is it? Right, so ask yourself the questions on that. Killing Christians. And what do? The more Christians that are slaughtered by pagans, the more the Vatican, under the Pope, who is nothing more than the modern representation of the Roman Emperor, plays, and the Vatican plays diplomat between all this. Oh, we're the Holy Order. We, let's say, but what's even more amazing, and what's more in your face about the proof that after the Dark Ages at Rome, they settle in Greenland. We covered that in the first video. They move their imperial power to there. But after Rome moves their imperial power, they're going to let the rest of the world know that, yeah, Rome is still in power. And how do they do this? They give us something called the Renaissance era. You know all those great ancient artists that you know about? Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Where did all these Renaissance artists hail from? The sculptors, the artists, the philosophers out of the Renaissance era. And the Renaissance era is mainly a Christian, it's a Christian Renaissance. It's Christian based. That's why we have Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. And we have all these. But a lot of the art that comes out of the Renaissance era is pagan in nature. Basically ties in with idolatry now, doesn't it? Which is talked about not to happen in the Bible. I told you I wouldn't get too religious in this lecture, but I have to point that fact out there. Yeah, a lot of the Renaissance art is pagan in nature. This is the resurgence of Rome, letting the world know that we are still in power. They do it through the guise of the Renaissance era. This new, we come out of the Dark Ages. Rome moves to Greenland. Through their secret societies, they have now infiltrated everywhere from China. They did this with religious missionaries on the Silk Road. A little bit of history of China too. China wasn't always China. They were invaded by the Mongols at one time, and even the emperor of China was taken down and ruled by the Mongols. Now, through this, religious missionaries. Remember, before they conquered America, they sent religious missionaries over here to, you know, the indigenous people that they dropped off a few thousand years ago. They came back to visit the Native Americans or other indigenous peoples around the world before Britain would conquer Australia or South Africa. And they do it under the guise of what? Missionaries. What are missionaries? They come around and teach people about the new religions. And I believe they also are the people who set the secret societies up under the guise of religious missionaries. So it's very interesting. We get this Renaissance era that comes after the Dark Ages, and this Renaissance is led by the Vatican, Rome. Now, Rome in ancient times, if you know, was the apex of civilization. If you weren't Roman, you were considered a barbarian. Their level of, I gotta give Romans credit, they were the only people in ancient times who, the aqueduct system, they gave fresh water to all their citizens. They had bread and circuses, the Colosseum fights. No one was building to the level that Rome was in ancient times, and had the type of, even though 80% of the 80% of the population of Rome were actually slaves, but they still lived at a very high degree of civilization, and they did it. They conquered the ancient world through imperialism, through wars. However, after the Dark Ages, in the beginning of their Renaissance era, what happens now? Well, Rome decides, since we're in Greenland, we don't need to conquer the world through imperialism. We're going to do it through the manipulation of religion and secret societies. We're going to cover secret societies in the next lecture, don't worry. We get what, now this is just one example, the 100-Year War. And now, what is this? The 100-Year War was just the first of many. Hold on. The 100-Year War was a war that went on. It was a war that happened between England and France, and it was very bloody. However, this is what at the time that England is united as a kingdom, and France is very important because France has very close ties to the United States of America. Benjamin Franklin was a member of a secret society out of France known as the Hellfire Club. He's one of the founders of this country. I live in Philadelphia. We were the capital of the United States of America at one time. And guess what? All of our architecture in Philadelphia, in the old city, is based on French architecture. In fact, it's said that Philadelphia is the closest thing you can get to being in France or Paris, France, without actually going there, just by looking at the architecture. So it was there's huge influence with France. France is a very big player. Another interesting player in this is, Rome refers to them as Germania, or Germany, the Gauls. This is a very interesting story that ties in with there about Germany. They did go to war with Rome at one time. But the Vatican ushers in the Renaissance, what they're calling people a new development of human civilization. We wouldn't see the next major development in human civilization until the Industrial Revolution, which doesn't happen until the 1800s. So between 1000 AD and the 1800s, we have 800 years of bloody war going on basically all around the planet. This even falls into line with our own American Revolution, where, going back to the symbol, the obelisk, we covered this in the first video, that is a sign of Roman domination through military or blood. You can't have the founding of a new country unless it's done on a blood sacrifice, which is the Revolutionary War. So we have 800 years of turmoil, not just between France and England fighting with each other, but the player behind all of it becomes, the biggest player behind a lot of it is the Vatican itself, which is Rome, who tries to act as the diplomat of all these countries warring, and they try to unite all the countries of Europe and England under Christendom. We'll cover this in the next video, because I said the next video on this lecture is going to revolve around the secret societies, but this ties heavily into a secret society you're probably well aware of, known as the Knights Templar, who eventually would flee to Switzerland and set up the banking arm of Rome, known as Swiss banking. We'll cover that next. The secret societies is just another thing that's going to put the nail in the coffin more, proving this theory is correct, that Rome still is in power, and they're using the Vatican and religions and secret societies, all, which is one of the ways. But I hear, doing this a lot of times, I hear people, some people I think get the idea, if you really want to know who runs the world, it is the Vatican. But the idea that Rome moves its imperial power to Greenland and then uses all these proxy states, and the fact that all of our religions, whether it's Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, have more in common from religions that stem out of Babylon than anything. And we think we're so different. And you know what? There's been a lot of blood spilled over this fighting of religions, fighting of politics. And this is how Rome has been playing the game for thousands of years, pulling the little puppet strings of all these 206 countries, and all 206 of these countries have secret societies, not just the Masons. There's a lot of them. The Rosicrucians, the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Malta. The list goes on and on. The Club of Rome. There's even more elite ones that we don't even know about. The Council of 300. The Order of the Black Sun. We're going to get into secret societies in the next lecture, and I even think that I'll be able to open your eyes up to some secret societies you didn't even know existed, because they're very elite ones. Now, going to Greenland. How many of the Romans are actually in Greenland? Look, I would say it would be nothing more than a symbolic gathering of like a secret society. What do you have in a secret society? You have a ritual master, right? And then he's surrounded in a circle of lower level priests and witches, right? Is that nothing more than the Emperor of Rome being surrounded in a circle by his Senate, which is the same way that we model our government? So as far as the numbers that are actually in Greenland, it's probably very small. Probably mostly slaves that serve them. Like a lot like the Skeksis from the Dark Crystal had the Gelfling serving them as slaves, right? But the actual number of the Skeksis in the Dark Crystal, well, when Henson made that movie, there was only 12 of them. And I think he did that symbolic of the Illuminati bloodline families. In a nutshell, I believe what is going on, and of course that'll probably be one of the last videos I make of this series, is the bloodlines. But I believe the real Senate of Rome in Greenland, the ones who've used religion to manipulate all the religion and politics to rule over Earth, as we see here. I believe that the Emperor is probably the leader, the Dragon Queen, known as Mummu Tiamat, coming from Sumerian teachings, and the bloodlines are more or less probably derivatives of the Ajiji gods. The Anunnaki, of course, being created by the Ajiji. I'm not going to get into an Anunnaki lecture here. I know a lot of people, they like to praise the work of other Anunnaki researchers, but give me credit. Have you ever seen any of the Anunnaki researchers talking about the Yazidi religion or the Peacock Angel? That they have a book of Revelation, that they were the first ones to teach about the Peacock Angel being condemned by God and thrown into hell? No. Gotta give me credit for that one. But just follow the symbols. It's very easy. I mean, so the peacock becomes the eagle. And remember, the peacock is not native to ancient Babylon. How would they have known about this bird? Pretty interesting, huh? Why is Shiva associated with the peacock and the serpent? Why is Saint Michael? And then we have the doves in the New Testament. Then we have the Masonic eagle. Not that hard to figure out. And then the Vatican, playing neutral on all this, that we are the authority on Christianity now, right? They adopt the double eagle gets canceled out and becomes the double keys. And you'll notice the keys, they're different colors, as above, so below. What do keys do? They unlock things. And we all know about the Vatican archives now, in the Vatican library. There's a lot that can be unlocked if you study the Vatican and Rome. I believe these keys are symbolic of what I am teaching you right now. Rome is still in power. They never died. That's going to be all for this. This video is just to show you how religions have a lot more in common with each other than we might want to believe or not to believe. And it all stems back to this, of course. Follow the eagle, or in this case, follow the peacock. Anyway, if you're here in the chat, thanks for showing up. I love all you guys. Next video I do in this series, it's not going to be the next video I do, but the next in this series is we're going to delve more into the secret societies, because secret societies and religion, they go hand in hand. Got a lot of fake people out there preaching the gospel who are in the closet pagans who go to the Masonic lodges at night. Just saying. That's probably why a lot of people don't touch on the subjects that I do, because they're not allowed to. Or, right, take that for what it is. Anyway, if anyone's able to help me out with donations, because I am demonetized, all the links are in the description. If you want to buy Raging Reptilian Teespring merchandise, that link is also in the description. So is my link if you want to follow me at LBRY. I'm on Library now. All my videos do get uploaded to there also. Any questions or comments, leave them below. Until we speak again, this is Kinninigan, and take care.